If we have a leader that is not rooted everything on the fundamental foundational level, it's not about belief in God, then it is destined for failure.
Religion isn't just something of the past, but it's like we are living the holidays and recognizing for what it is that the Bible is now once again alive. The prophecies are coming to pass, and it's a hard road to freedom, but we are literally on the road toward redemption. Victory can only happen when you settle the land and you declare sovereignty over the land.
Welcome back to the Israel Guys and the Land of Israel Network, where we believe that in a world of anti-Israel propaganda and Jew hatred, you should be directly connected to the heartland of Israel. So happy to be back with Joshua Waller, Ari Abramowitz, Jeremy Gimpel. And you guys are getting almost a 2-for-1 in the last week. So very exciting. Lots going on. Obviously, tonight, as you're watching this, probably Israel is entering Memorial Day. And then Memorial Day goes straight into Israel's Independence Day. I definitely want to get into that. Josh, you're at the JNS Policy Conference in Jerusalem yesterday, which sounds like it was something that we haven't really seen before. Some amazing things. Definitely a theme about Israeli sovereignty in the land of Israel. Probably got to talk about the Iran explosion. Was Israel behind it? Thoughts on that? No. Ari, you were headlined in a BBC documentary called The Settlers. I don't know. We'll have to decide if you're one of the radical settlers occupying the West Bank or not. Josh, unfortunately, didn't make the cut.
I saw a lot of the commentary. They called me a terrorist.
Really?
An Israeli terrorist. And part of me sort of really wishes I was a terrorist, in the sense to inflict terror in the hearts of our enemies, right? That's what the nation of Israel needs to do to vanquish darkness from the world, is to instill a little terror in people that need to have terror instilled in them. Otherwise, they're going to be allowing the terror within their hearts to really manifest.
Can I just say that that's why Ari made so many good clips in this BBC documentary, because he said stuff like that.
I really gave a lot to him on a silver platter. You start off a sentence with, I wish I was a terrorist.
You're like, oh my God.
Well, obviously, the BBC, they spend 3 hours with you, and then they cut little 5-second clips.
However they wanted to do, he would never release the entire 3.5 hours that he did with me, because it would expose the dishonest, manipulative, propagandistic, lying duplicity that is BBC. Where you really see that I'm not only like a lover of the Jewish people, but of humanity. Like I'm a medical clown to go to hospitals to make kids laugh.
That's what this show's for, that people to see the real Ari Abramowitz. The radical Jewish settler that loves the land of Israel and the people of Israel and the world. But anyways, maybe we'll get into that. I want to play the opening of the documentary because it's pretty great. You were literally the first 20 seconds of the documentary. Jeremy, maybe we'll start with this. You were talking about Spain. Everybody knows Spain, like the entire country has no power right now, but you said something happened between Spain and Israel recently, and maybe there's a connection here.
Well, months ago, they declared recognition of Palestine as a state. That was their response to October 7th. And that was their first step or stab in the back to Israel. And then just a few days ago, Spain terminates an arms deal with Israel for over $7 million. And it was like their way of just isolating Israel, putting them on the side. And now half their country has no electricity. That's relatively unprecedented in Europe. The hospitals, the airports, the banking system, it's a total blackout. And Morocco now is trying to come to their rescue to save them with some sort of extra energy from a different country. But right now they are hopeless and helpless, and they're about to declare martial law. It's a state of emergency because Spain has brought in so many immigrants from African countries, from Arab countries, that now that there's no electricity, they realize the havoc that is about to be unleashed on their country.
Yeah, with your permission, essentially what they and a number of other countries are trying to do is leave Israel in the dark. Right? They're trying to isolate us and leave us in the dark. And what happens to them? Now they're in the dark. The reason I'm saying that is because we have the luxury on this show of actually speaking our hearts as people of faith that understand that God runs the world and communicates us through the events of the world. And there's an idea of midah keneged midah, attribute for attribute. That's one of the ways of God saying, I'm in charge here. This is really happening. We look at what happened in Iran with the explosion. We'll get maybe more into that soon. But this was missile-making material that exploded within Iran, causing possibly billions of dollars of damage, terrorizing the country with the weapons, in the creation of weapons that they were seeking to do that very thing to Israel. That's the way it happens, and that's also the way I see this BBC documentary. That's the truth, because BBC, what are they doing in this cynical, perhaps even naive, if I'm going to be generous, they're siding with the Palestinians, a nation that doesn't even exist, against the most indigenous nation that's ever existed in the history of the world, which is Israel and the land of Israel, Jews in Judea. And the reason they keep on the Palestinian thing is they're trying to politicize it rather than seeing the truth, is this is just another front in the jihad that is coming for them. And by defending them and siding with the Arabs of Israel and the Palestinians, as they say, they're actually making their own beds. I mean, already look right now. The mayor of London is a Muslim. The mayor of Birmingham is a Muslim. The mayor of Leeds is a Muslim. The mayor of Blackburn is a Muslim. The mayor of Sheffield, Oxford, Luton, Oldham, Rockton, all Muslims in Londonistan, right? And they're already being taken over. One could possibly say that it is mida keneged mida, attribute for attribute. That's one of the themes I see playing out right now.
Well, I think if we take the attribute for attribute and we bring it all the way back to the early return of the Third Commonwealth of Israel, it was the British that did not allow the Jews to return to the land of Israel and sided with the Arab Muslims in the area, the Arab Muslims in the land of Israel. And now it's those very Arab Muslims of the area that are going to cause the downfall of London and England.
Can we watch the first 30 seconds of this documentary? And then maybe, Ari, you could finish the sentence that they clipped out. Here, watch this.
Do you want to show where we are right now? Because I think we're quite deep inside what are called the Palestinian territories.
What you call the Palestinian territories, I call it the heart of Judea. If you say the Palestinian territories, you're essentially already saying that this right here is going to be a jihadist Palestinian state right in the heart of Israel. Not only in the heart of Israel, we're talking about
But why
the
jihadist? Why do you say jihadist? Why couldn't it just be a Palestinian state?
Okay, to understand the Arab way of thinking, that they understand there's a war. They win the war if they get territory. They lose the war if they lose territory.
You could flip that and say, well, that's what, in a sense, you're doing.
That's what I aspire to do. That's what I aspire to do.
I love how he cuts that clip and then he just lets the camera just pause on his face as he's contemplating the words of this radical settler who just said he wants to occupy, land from the Palestinians. So anyways,
I just got to say this because built on what Jeremy just spoke about with what's happening in Spain, there's this just basic principle that the world refuses to believe in, but it's so embedded in the foundations of the world. And that goes back to Abraham in Genesis 12. I'll bless those who bless you. I'll curse those who curse you. Is the BBC, you just told us what's coming out of England these days. They're being overrun by the very thing. Look at this guy.
How does London have power? That's my question.
Right. Well, yeah, at the same time, look at what is happening to these people who are viciously, you saw how vicious he was in his own little deceiving way against you. But I want to bring that to what's happening in Spain. There's these curses that are coming on the people of Israel. And then there is a curse. The curse doesn't land on Israel. If they try to curse you, that curse does not come. That curse falls back. That's the blessing of Abraham. If that nation chooses to bless, and I just literally saw this as well. There's been a lot of countries, and I want to bring this to a fuller picture while we're on this topic, that nations that bless Israel are blessed, but nations that curse Israel are cursed. Colombia, Nicaragua, Bolivia, and Belize have all severed diplomatic ties with Israel over 2024. Not one of those countries has failed in receiving their curse back. There has been massive national disasters, if it's flooding, fires, crazy. And all of these nations that are cursing Israel are receiving a curse back. And it's just the foundation.
Tell you, John, one thing I've really worked on doing is not praying for that to happen.
Of course not.
Meaning pray, they actually, it's good that I can't believe they included in the documentary that when he left, I blessed him. Meaning I don't want his children to be stabbed by jihadists in the playground, as is happening throughout Europe. I don't want them, even though Mida can attribute for attribute by justice, that's what I want. Goodness, I want life for everyone in blessing, including for him. But I did learn, like, there's different enemies that we're facing that have different faces. There's Hamas, we are who we are, and you got to at least respect that. And then there's the Palestinian Authority, that's Hamas in suits. And then there's Louis Theroux, that's pretty much a snake, right? He comes and presents himself as sort of
Just trying to get the story.
Just trying to get the story right, trying to figure things out, when in reality he has a very clear agenda. Everybody he talked to, every Jew he talked to, zoom in on their gun. And I saw that when they went away from my face, that's when they do all the cutting. Because then you can't see that you're all the chopping that's happening there. But I was still sort of happy with that, even though what was missing from that is that there's a big difference between us and them. And this is Judea and Israel. There's the land that God gave us, and the land that, by the way, we won in a war. People never talk about that. There was a war, just as has happened throughout all of history, and the guy that wins gets the thing. Right? And so we won a war fair and square, grossly and overwhelmingly outnumbered, and God gave us this land. So there's a big difference between us and them, but in the end of the day, I'm saying, yes, they're right. They actually see this clearly. In a war, when you win land, you're winning the war.
According to Ron Dermer yesterday, as I was at a session with him, he said in the next 7 months, I believe is what he said, 7 months, this 7-front war will be won by Israel. That's a hopeful little session here. He says that, I believe he said 7 months, but I could be wrong about that. But within a few months, he said, within this year, he estimates that Israel will have finished this 7-front war.
I thought he said a year.
No, before a year is over, yeah.
Because I heard someone say that they asked, what will it be like in a year? And he said in a year. And then the headlines were, Ron Dermer says the war will last another year.
No, they flipped it. No, he said, it's multiple months, but he said, the biggest point that I want to make here is that Israel is about to win this 7-front war. We're on the cusp of winning, according to the goals that the government has set out to win. Of course, Ari would change those goals a little bit. But the goals that the government of Israel that has set out, they believe that they can reach those goals within the coming months.
Well, I think that the term win needs to be defined.
Yes.
What does the word win actually mean? Is it hurting their infrastructure, weakening the Hamas? I mean, we've won so many rounds, but real victory in Hebrew, netzach, is to win, but it also means eternity. Meaning victory is something that's eternal, and victory can only happen when you settle the land and you declare sovereignty over the land.
That's right.
Then that is actual victory. So if we're going to declare sovereignty on 7 fronts, I'm in. That would be amazing.
Great news, guys. Israel Summit live stream tickets are available June 9th through 11th. Even if you cannot make it in person, for just a few dollars, you can get live access to all of the inspiring speakers, including Ambassador David Friedman, Michelle Bachmann, Eric Stackelbeck, Yishai Fleischer, Jeremy and Ari, obviously a concert by the Israeli hit duo Yonina, and much, much more. No matter where you are in the world, if you can't make it to Texas, you can be equipped and inspired to fight and stand on behalf of Israel and Israel's biblical heartland. Just visit the link in the description below for all of the details. Remember, it's just $35 to get access for you and your entire family to a life-changing 3-day event from the comfort of your own home. Act fast. You don't want to wait. The summit is coming up very soon. You can get live stream access right now. Click the link in the description below to learn more.
You know what was actually wild is that Ambassador Huckabee, even though he didn't explicitly say what the boundaries of Israel would be, he gave a biblical thing, and he said the boundaries of Israel were set in the Bible. Like, basically, he said these are the biblical borders of Israel, and he alluded to the fact that was actually the boundaries of Israel. So,
well, because you know clearly that he supports Judea and Samaria, and he supports sovereignty, but now that he's ambassador, he has to convey Trump's policy, so he has to be really careful about how he says it. But
he also believes in the Bible first and foremost.
So that's his way of saying, he does believe in this. I've just my thoughts about the documentary, and we'll link it down below, which, by the way, has like almost 2 million views on X right now, even though you were saying it's like only available in the UK to watch.
I can't wait till they do the positive interview and they put all my comments in.
How long did you spend with him?
I spent 3
3.5 hours is probably going to be a separate documentary.
Yeah, I was
part
hoping when
two.
that comes out. Yeah.
My thoughts are we're kind of used to, and by the way, this film is called The Settlers, right? We're used to seeing these films, right? I mean, every mainstream network has done a documentary in the last 20, 30 years about the settlers or the West Bank or the settlements, right? I mean, Vice, Vox, AP, BBC, everybody's done these. But to me, this feels very audacious in the wake of October 7th because of the fact that, and then one of you guys can tell me, you had a stat right before we started recording on this. It feels very audacious to make such a propagandized film, trying to portray the settlements and the settlers in the light of occupying colonizers, taking over the West Bank, trying to portray the Palestinians as victims when we obviously all know that the story's flipped, right? And also, and just the idea that 85%, who was saying this stat? 85% of the Palestinians in Judea and Samaria support Hamas.
If there's one person
I said that to him, and he actually surgically cut that out. He cut that out. But you know what? This isn't lost on. In one of the leading periodicals in England, the Daily Telegraph, they actually wrote this, right? They're not right at all. They wrote, an example, Thoreau meets a Texan called Ari Abramowitz who has emigrated to Israel and illegally set up a farm inside the West Bank. Thoreau suggests it's weird for Abramowitz to carry several guns while he goes about his day, including a visit to the synagogue. My gun is here to protect the nation of Israel from those who seek to harm us, says Abramowitz. Is it that dangerous? Asks Thoreau in a lightly skeptical voice, but doesn't change to make the fact that Thoreau, not Abramowitz, he seems like the mad one. Recent history suggests that Jews have good reason to be prepared for an attack on their homes. Yes, we're talking about the Palestinians from the West Bank here, and not Hamas, but you can forgive Jewish residents from taking precautions for fearing their Arab neighbors. After invoking October 7th as his reason for making the film, Thoreau barely mentions it again. It's a shame that journalists aren't allowed into Gaza because a film in which he gently accuses a Hamas leader of being a bit of a sociopath would be one to watch.
What I don't understand about that is he's saying, wow, you have a gun. Is it really that dangerous here? And he made this documentary in the wake of October 7th. And on October 7th, there were 38 children that were murdered and there were 42 children that were kidnapped into Gaza, into tunnels. And he's saying, you have a gun? What? It's so dangerous? The reality in Israel, 85%, and I think it's probably a lot more than that, supported October 7th because it's not about politics. There is a global jihad that is going and sweeping around the world. And just so we talk, measure for measure, attribute for attribute, there are over 150 stabbings a day right now in the United Kingdom. And that's not happening amongst soccer fans. That's all of the immigrants that are voting in these Muslim mayors. It's slowly but surely tearing their society apart. So he who curses Israel will be cursed. I think that is a truth that we will continue to see unfold.
When I heard the stat yesterday at the summit, we know this around this table, but for it to be from Ron Dermer was incredibly validating. Like, well, Ron Dermer, if Ron Dermer
is one of the advisors to Bibi Netanyahu at the moment,
has worked for Bibi for 25 years. Never left Bibi's side through this whole entire process of political, process of Bibi's, rising and influence. Ron Dermer's been right there with him. For Ron Dermer to say 85% of the Arabs of Judea and Samaria supported the attacks of October 7th, I just thought, okay, now we're starting to deal with reality. A lot of political leaders in Israel have had their head in the sand for a long time, trying to, whether it was to, try to get influence from other countries to be like, hey, we're not really, and flip the whole narrative to say 85% of the settlers are the violent ones. That was really kind of the concept, and that was we see that with the intelligence with Barr and these guys that are now resigning. Their whole concept of Israel is that we look to the Gazans, the Arabs were the solution to the peace. That they took on the narrative of the nations that said, no, you need to create a two-state solution, and you're going to get that, and peace will be brought through your hostile Arab neighbor. How ridiculous thought that was, but the higher levels of Israel took that on. They tried to make peace with the 85% that hated and wanted to kill them, and said that the settlers, yourself, are the problem. And that has been the overwhelming issue within Israel that is now flipping. And to hear that from the highest levels of the Israeli government right now, they're understanding that is a farce. You cannot make peace when 85% of the population you're trying to make peace with want to kill
the
you.
highest levels of the Israeli government are really internalizing that truth?
Well, at least Ron Dermer was. I think they know it.
He was at the JNS conference, number one. And number two, he is not the highest levels of the Israeli government. He does not, Ron Dermer himself
Advises the highest levels.
And I've also heard things said, but when it comes to things being actually done, did Saul kill Agag? Did that happen? Did he finish him off? No. So all of the words and the recognition and the things don't really matter if it's not reflected in actual action.
And in policy.
And a policy.
In determining victory as sovereignty and settlement, if we actually define victory against our enemy as reclaiming our God-given homeland, then that would actually define us as winning. Right now, when it says we're going to win on 7 fronts, it sounds good, but it doesn't actually mean anything.
That's one thing I learned from Ariel Sharon, and I've learned on my journey in life looking at the government, is Sharon said his entire platform becoming prime minister that he was elected upon is he said the future of Gaza is the same as the future of Tel Aviv. Nothing will, and then what happened? He was the one that ethnically cleansed and transferred Jews, not only living Jews, but I saw the bodies of Jews that were murdered from these very terrorists being exhumed. Otherwise, the terrorists would have exhumed them and desecrated their bodies. Right. And Sharon himself ripped us out of Gaza. Why? Because he was in the end of the day, he would even have admitted he was a secular Zionist. He's a secular right-winger. If we have a leader that is not rooted everything on the fundamental foundational level, it's not about belief in God, then it is destined for failure.
I just can't believe that this documentary has brought a Palestinian state back to the conversation. And not just hear from this documentary. It's not just the documentary, but it is now being surfaced again that, that must be the solution. The response to October 7th and realizing that 85% of the Arabs within Judea and Samaria support October 7th. And we're saying the solution now, it's to make another jihadist state in the heartland of Israel. That to me blows my mind. And it reminds me a little bit, did you guys see that maybe a little more than a week ago, there was a shark attack in Israel for the first time in Israel's history. And so-
a guy was killed.
A person was killed, and there's actually videos of before the shark attack that there are dozens of Israeli families, parents with their children, walking around, petting the sharks, looking at the sharks, and then eventually one shark just kind of gets a bit hungry.
He was a shark.
And then he attacks and kills one of the Israelis. And then, of course, I don't think anyone's going to do that anymore, but there was like a tourist attraction that they were going to stand with the sharks and pet with the sharks. And if we are living inside our borders with 85% of us that support the murder of children, the rape of women, and they're supporting that, we're literally living amongst sharks, trying to pet them and make peace with them when it's just a matter of time until that shark attacks us again. It's like a perfect analogy.
What I find fascinating is that these nations that are trying to push this on Israel, chiefly Europe right now, is actually achieving their goal of a Arab state within their own countries. It's fascinating. Even America, there's massive movement within the Arab world of Arabs. Obviously, that's being challenged right now with the new administration. But these countries that curse of cursing Israel with, what bigger curse could you could ever even dream of trying to establish and set up an enemy within Israel's borders that would constantly attack her? That would be defined probably as the worst kind of curse you could possibly give to someone. That is being placed back on the heads of all these countries that are trying to do it in a really fascinating internal, like, God sense that's what's happening to them as they're trying to push that on you.
Yeah, I think that it's always important to look at Israel from a bird's eye view, that whatever's happening within Israel isn't just within its borders and not about politics or some sort of internal struggle, but it's representative of something much larger, a spiritual move in the world.
Yeah.
Like Israel is an idea. And just last week, there were almost 30 Hindus that were killed in Pakistan. And now there looks like war is heating up. India's buffering up. They've cut off their water to Pakistan. Like, things are really heating up. And there was a protest in London outside of the Pakistani embassy by people that are pro-India. And you have to see this clip. Why are there Israeli flags at a India-Pakistan protest? Why? Why are they waving Israeli flags? Because intuitively, subconsciously, they know that Israel is on the front lines, the tip of the spear in this fight against global jihad. Because what happened to those Hindus in Pakistan, that was jihad. What will happen to the Christians in Europe, that's jihad. What's happening in Israel on October 7th, they didn't say free Palestine or anything political. All that they yelled was Allah Akbar and made it into a religious fest.
But this isn't new for the Indians. This is a long history that they have already come to terms with. Think about Buddhists and Hindus. Who is more like live and let live and be at peace and just peaceful and frolicky? And then all of a sudden, in comes Islam, and they see a Buddhist shrine or a Hindu temple. And what do? They knock it down and they build a mosque on top of it. Because that is the entire message of Islam. They will go to where other faiths have their places of worship and say, no, Allahu Akbar. In Arabic, Kabira is great. It doesn't mean Allah is great. Akbar means the greatest, which means that if any other faith has any sort of independent shrine, their goal is to knock it down and build a mosque right on top of it. And the Indians have experienced that, and they know that, and there's a deep kinship and brotherhood with Israel because they recognize the truth. When you experience it, as opposed to when you are told it in some article, when you really experience something, it becomes a part of you. And so that's what's happening with India. I wish it was happening more with Europeans as they have their children cut to pieces in parks with someone saying Allah Akbar.
Well, it's just very clear, I think. In pretty much every country in the world right now, the lines are being drawn and people are choosing sides. And each side is getting more and more vocal and more entrenched in their ideology. And we're just seeing that so clearly. European countries, just all over the world, right? Even in America. America is like, it's not clear what the Trump administration is going to do. As pro-Israel as they are right now, not clear what they're going to do with Iran. There's definitely a danger that Trump will not deal with Iran the way they should be. Maybe we should get into Iran quick before we talk about Memorial Day.
But do you think America is the one that had whatever behind this massive explosion, or do you really think? I mean, obviously, I don't think America was behind it.
I think America knows who's behind it.
There's not really any question about Israel did something. Had to.
Really?
You don't think
it's
so?
It's a possibility,
or
that it's just a thing that happened.
That's what I was going to say. Like the beginning of today's show,
God like struck a container with lightning, and God
obviously. When you're dealing with these when you're dealing with a nation, with a country whose entire mission is to build up their arsenal as much as possible, then they have massive amounts of this fissile material. And things happen.
Do anybody remember how much it was? It was like gazillions of containers. I mean, crazy amount.
Somebody said
put out the fires.
Somebody said like more than $1 billion worth. Right.
$1.5 to $2 billion
How many
worth of
people
supplies.
were killed? Was there
40 or something like that?
Yeah, something. But I don't think that's the final count. And like hundreds and hundreds injured.
Is this all the shipments that were coming from China like a while ago? Remember that? These massive shipments that were coming in
it seems like it's an ongoing story, even though it happened several days ago already. Like there's still fires keep popping up. The death count keeps rising. Like they're still figuring out what's going on here.
Okay. I'm not saying anything except for I wholeheartedly believe that Israel did something.
Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me.
Okay. Why would they not? Yeah. I mean, come on. This is what has happened over and over and over again.
My question on Iran in general. Okay. Because Trump's administration keeps putting out statements. Talks are going very well. We're close to some kind of nuclear deal with Iran. We won't have to go to, military strikes or anything like that. Israel keeps saying we will not allow Iran to get nuclear weapons. Every day that goes by, I know they've been saying that Iran was close to nuclear capability since 2012, but every day that goes by, do they have nuclear weapons already? Very possible. The big question is, will Trump deal with Iran like a Western nation with the idea that if we just sign a deal, which is the same mistake Obama made, then everything will be fine, right? I thought this quote from Morton Klein from the JNS conference yesterday to Arut Sheva was good. He said, "I'm very worried they're going to make some sort of deal because Iran will not fulfill their obligations under any deal they sign. They'll sign anything and they will violate it. With regimes like Iran, Syria, Iraq, you don't make deals to stop them from having nukes. You destroy their facilities. They made a deal with Hitler. It didn't work. He violated it." So I think that's the big question here is with Middle Eastern countries, they don't respect deals. at all. It's the Western democracy, Middle Eastern culture, two very different ideologies. If Trump signs a deal with Iran, what does it mean? Does it mean anything?
Well, I saw Tucker Carlson said something. Obviously, we're all wondering what in the world's going on with Tucker these days. But he was saying that that if Israel strikes and takes out the Iranian nuclear power, then that will lead to World War III. And in his
My question is how, because Israel is not going to strike Iran in such a way that they're going to be able to strike back. I hope.
Israel likely is not going to strike Iran in a way that they know who did it. That's also what's happening.
It's going to have to be Russia or China to enter the conflict.
No, but I want to say what Tucker finished
with.
with, that Israel should not strike because that would lead to world. It's better that we have a nuclear Iran than World War III.
Because when they say death to America, death to Israel, they don't mean that. That's not actually what they mean. They just mean we want to be free. We want to be.
But can somebody respond to this on like World War III, nuclear Iran or World War III, and it's like he's choosing between the two, and it seems like, obviously a nuclear Iran is better than World War III. That's the rationale.
What Tucker doesn't understand is that Israel destroying Iran's nuclear capacity, if even possible at this point, would prevent
World War III.
It would prevent World War III. Really, to anyone with eyes in their head that listens to Iran, that knows anything about Ayatollah Khomeini and the leaders in Iran, they have is it not clear from their constant suicide bombing and funding of suicide, how many suicide attacks? Their entire essence is that. There's no greater way for them to go down. They're just waiting to be in a powerful enough position to be able to capitalize on a suicide kamikaze attack that would guarantee their own survival. With America and Russia during the Cold War, right, there was mutually assured destruction. And so they were both sort of relatively rational players. That's not who we're dealing with here. They're rational, but within their own very clear jihadist construct.
As Israel celebrates 77 years of independence, this moment in history is an invitation to every believer to find their place in God's unfolding story, to wake up to the truth that divine action isn't locked in ancient times. It's here, now, moving powerfully and intimately in the world and in our personal lives. And that's why I created a new course, Waking Up, the ancient Judean way to biblical faith. Waking up is a path for every believer to transcend religion and reconnect to the foundations of emunah, the true biblical faith, just as Abraham and the prophets of Israel lived with it. A life alive with the presence of Hashem, a life that walks hand in hand with the living God. Check out this new course and book, Waking Up, at thelandofisrael.com.
Well, yeah, I think that's it. Like you were saying, Josh, would striking Iran's nuclear capabilities and taking them out prevent World War III or start World War III? And either way, which is it better to survive and be alive or to have World War III?
I wanted to tell this to Louis Theroux. I wanted to say, listen, in the end of the day, I'd prefer an Israel that the world hates than an Auschwitz that the world loves. They tend to love us for that moment when we're really being massacred and raped and burned and tortured. But listen, Israel, we need to do what we need to do to bring salvation to the world.
That's right.
Even if that means that the world themselves that we're saving doesn't recognize us for it, but vilifies us for it.
Well, I think in the 1980s, Menachem Begin took out the Osirak reactor in Iraq. And just like Tucker Carlson, many people in the world were saying, do not strike Iraq, do not strike Iraq. And then the Gulf War came around and America went to war with Iraq. And then the world's like standing in line, thanking us that they retroactively thanking Israel for having the courage and the leadership to take out the nuclear reactor. And to me, if you give Iran nuclear bombs, it's just a matter of time. It may be a year, maybe a month, maybe a few years, but having those nuclear bombs in the head of the snake of jihad, that was the worst move that the free world could possibly make.
Well, one thing Bibi Netanyahu said the other day at this press conference is that if someone tells you you're going to kill them, or they're going to kill you, you should believe them. Well, that's exactly what's going on.
Well,
if they get nuclear, they will use it to do what they want.
That's what I don't understand about Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, all these guys. Like, Iran they're not just saying they're going to kill Israel. They're going to kill America too. Well,
they have already. They already have killed not only Jews, they've killed Americans. The proxy forces of Iran, even on October 7th, took Americans hostage just like they did Israelis. That's what this is baffling, that these people obviously being bought out by some sort, like Tucker, these guys, it just doesn't make rational sense, even if you're America first. So what with all the Americans that are being killed and captured and all these things that are happening in Israel, we still have Americans that are being affected by this war. And no one's
just some Israeli fighter jets on their way to Iran, probably.
Yeah, probably on the way to take out some reactors. But that's the reality that I feel like these guys are obviously not seeing the truth of the situation.
Well, Netanyahu at the conference said that there is now a coordinated effort to turn right-wing influencers against Israel and to turn them against the Jewish people. The Democratic Party used to be very pro-Israel, and then there was a concerted effort. It just takes a few, and people like Joe Rogan, Tucker Carlson, they have huge followings, and they're slowly bringing their following along for a ride.
It's hard for me to really wrap my mind around that, because I know about the intergenerational, agenda on behalf of Soros and a lot of the nations of the world to turn America left and socialist and woke. We've seen that before. But I feel like a lot of these people that they're talking about, Joe Rogan, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, just to name like a few of them, they're really independent thinkers. What is this coordinated effort that they're just so easily brainwashed? I think there's something deeper and more profound that we really need to contend with regarding what's happening with them. And could we play a clip, just one of these clips from their show?
I'm just saying, if the rule is you cannot be critical, because he has no problem being very critical of America.
Yep.
He's critical of the left in America. Left is half the country. You have no problem eviscerating half of the country.
That's the current party in power.
But you can't criticize Israel as a country. That's just another country, unless you're saying, and you're clearly admitting, that the Daily Wire is an arm of the Israeli, I guess, media or propaganda machine. Is that? Oof. Are you manipulating the religious right in America? Are you manipulating the right-wing conservatives in America and selling them country western movies and putting on your little cowboy hat and fake moving in Nashville so that you could take all their money, and then in the process restricting free speech, one of the core tenets of the American identity? Ben.
Oof. Benjamin.
What is happening? There's trouble in paradise.
So last week we spoke about those American Jews that went to Roosevelt and begged him, please let in these 900 refugees before they're sent back to die in Auschwitz. And Roosevelt said, don't make this a Jewish war. And that sent a shiver down the spine of American Jewish leadership. That exact accusation is the one that really sends which is why I said Jews vote Democrat, because they're so terrified of people like Andrew Schultz coming and saying, what are you, Ben Shapiro? Are you a Jew first? Are you for Israel first? Is Daily Wire not even about America, but against America, manipulating the Christian right? Is that what's happening? You see what's happening? And this is coming from the right now. Right? And so that is a convergence from the left and the right against Israel and the Jews that is something that a lot of people, particularly right-wing Jews, are super terrified and disoriented and confused what's going on. These people that used to be super pro-Israel and with us are now turning against us in a systematic way.
What I'm so confused by is the fact that they're saying that Israel is somehow overly talked about in the media in some sort of positive way. Where is that happening? Like, it's not.
What media outlet are they talking about?
I think it's the BBC.
The fact that they're right. We just saw that the BBC hates Israel's guts and they want to destroy Israel. They're aligned with the Hamas ideology of an Arab state, and then that obviously that Arab state takes all of Israel. Like, that's their alignment there. What news agency are these people talking about that are somehow giving Israel like too much good press, that they're trying to, like, obviously what news agency has Israel bought out, if we're going to go along with their lines? Because nobody's talking about Israel in a positive sense on any of the major news platforms. And now these large platformed individuals, what large platformed individual, we can name one that's like, okay, Ben Shapiro, the only one out there, are they going to take him and make the example? What is he, the only pro-Israel guy that has a massive network? All the other ones hate Israel. Obviously, we just saw these clips, and they somehow have turned the narrative around that, what do you even say? When do they ever even talk to a Palestinian? It's like, The whole world
whole
is talking to
world.
Palestinians. No one's talking to Israel. As a matter of fact, it's the opposite of what they just said.
Right. And when they do, then it's tremendously disproportionate and it's edited and it's cut. I remember years ago, I don't know exactly where I'm going with this, but I interviewed Ben Shapiro and I said, it was one of my first interviews in the whole realm. And I said, you know, what would happen if Israel went to war with America? Scenario, things happen. Let's say that would happen. Who would you side with?
You asked him that?
I did. I did. And you know what he said? He said, whoever's right.
Yeah, I knew he couldn't answer the question.
Right.
Of
Well,
course.
I mean, that's an answer. It's an answer. He said, whoever's right.
I'd be interested
Whoever's
to see
acting in
how
the-
he would answer that question today, because it's
Well, I think it's a bad
it's pretty
question.
obvious.
though.
Like he has shifted in the past few years, and probably more since October 7th. But I think the question is not just for Ben Shapiro, but he's kind of like the figurehead of a lot of American Jews because he's so much in the spotlight and millions of people listen to him every day. It's a question for American Jews is like, what are you going to do? Like, how long can you continue being neutral or being pro-Israel and living in America? Or, you know, because at some point, like, it's already happening in Europe. At some point, American Jews will have to decide one way or the other.
You know,
right?
I was just talking to somebody at the Daily Wire that they actually said that the other Daily Wire hosts are actually backing away from Israel, and you see that.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
It's
Well,
a
and some have
global
left.
thing,
You got Candace Owens left, Brett Cooper left. Like,
right? No, but I'm saying even the positive conservative guys are pulling away from Israel on a grand level. They're not diving in and saying, we support, we're unequivocally connected. The Jews have every right to the God-given land. No, they're not saying that. Ben Shapiro's is literally a standalone, even in the network, for being very clear about that.
Well, if their goal is to amass a following, then by taking this divisive issue, they're going to lose part of their following, and they're just running a business. Ben Shapiro is trying to be honest and true as a believing Jew in the world, and he's really being caught in the crossfire right now. But what I do think is that Jews are always going to be left alone. There's nowhere to run. There's nowhere to hide. There's no ideological movement, the conservative movement, the Democratic Party, the Republican Party. There's no one to rely on other than God. And eventually, every Jew is going to have to come to terms with they have one home, they have one God, and Israel is their destiny. And it's just as soon to be manifest as we're watching it unfold right now.
And they have one people. I think Jews who have been through the ringer recognize that in the end of the day, the right and the left, super left-wing, anti-Israel, anti-settlement Jews, I would die for them too. We're all brothers. It's not like Hitler was making any sort of distinctions. The ultra-Orthodox Jews and the Jews that founded the Jews for Hitler movement all ended up in the gas chambers of Auschwitz.
well, and that's what happened on October 7th. Like many of the people that lived on the Gaza border that ended up being killed were the most liberal left-wing peace activists. The famous lady who was killed, you know, she took Palestinian Arabs children from Gaza to Israeli hospitals for medical treatment. And like you're saying, zero distinction. It
One of the
did not
hostages-
matter
yeah, one of the
how
hostages-
good of friends they were with anybody in Gaza. They were all killed.
Yeah, they were activists, exactly like you said. But one of the hostages came out and said his wife and his children were killed. And he said, it's good that it happened to us in Gaza and not to Judea and Samaria. Because if it happened there, then they would have been put on them and they would have been blamed for it. And at least now the truth is clear.
Well, I think the one thing that's lacking in all these conversations that we're hearing on the new right in America and the anti-Israel movement from the left, and that's really our job, is God. God needs to be brought back into the conversation. In God we trust. That's what's written on the American dollar. America was founded by godly people. And when you look around the world, who aligns with the God of America? Who aligns with that ultimate good when they envision a world, one nation under God? Who is the people that represents that God in the Middle East and in the world? And they would see that Israel is their truest ally on the most fundamental level. And that's the conversation that no one is having, not Rogan and not these comedians and not people that is our responsibility, that the Torah go forth from Zion and the word of God from Jerusalem to bring God back into the conversation, to bring the Bible back into the conversation, even if it's not politically correct, maybe specifically because it's not politically correct, but to actually talk about what's going on, because without God, Israel doesn't make sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, whether they've been bought out or have literally just sold their soul to a narrative that is opposed to everything that you just said, that's what's happening. And it's at the war for America. We see it happening for our young people. it literally is that basis of biblical, foundational. That's what America was founded on. The Judeo-Christian, as Jeremy likes to say, the Judea Christian value that's being eroded by our leaders across America. They know very good and well that if they can erode that Jewish connection, deep foundational connection, then they can also obliterate this whole connection to Israel in the modern redemptive context. And if we were to be frank here, as people that believe in the Bible, this is literally what the Bible says will happen. Zechariah is very clear. All nations will stand and rise against Israel. But I love the psalm. I was on an interview yesterday. I said, but you know what? As a Bible believer, King David said it very nicely, or one of the psalms, not sure if King David wrote it. He said, God is in the midst of her. She's not going to be moved. That's just what the Bible says. And that's just one. And that's the encouragement, because I know we're this show, we always like to be a little bit more encouraging than negative, and this has been really tough to recognize where we're at. And in a way, I think it's good that we're talking about the hard things. People need to understand it, but remember the hope. God is in the midst of Israel. She's not going to be moved. It doesn't work. You can't. The nations can try. They can try to heave Jerusalem away. It will not happen. This is the day that we're in.
I think that's something that these so-called, the new woke right, like, it's like you're saying, Jeremy, bring God back into the conversation and forget about all of the politics and you're trying to expose that America is run by Israel now and everything. Like, you believe in the Bible? Like, read the end of the story, right? And that's all you need to know.
Yeah, when Louis Theroux, I hate to bring it back to him, it just happened. It was just released. At the very end of the last piece of the interview, he gave his own little commentary about me that I think was meant to demean or to insult. But when I heard it, I turned to my wife and I said, I want that written on my epithet on my tombstone. Could we actually play it right now?
Yeah.
For Ari, it was clear that nothing is greater than the word of God, and that word had led him to believe that it was the divine right of the Jewish people to settle and rule this land. See you later.
God should bless and protect you. Amen. So while he meant that as an insult, I received that as the highest and most lofty of compliments, because I would love to believe that that really is true, that I'm living up to that.
How beautiful are the tents of Jacob, right? Like the Balak, as he was trying to curse you, he actually gave you a blessing.
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
So speaking of, we don't have a lot of time left, but speaking of things that are difficult, but at the same time hopeful, Israel's Memorial Day begins tonight. As you're watching this, it's probably Memorial Day or Independence Day, because Memorial Day every year leads directly into Independence Day. And it's also always the week after Holocaust Memorial Day or Holocaust Remembrance Day. Who wants to speak about Memorial Day first? And obviously what makes it so much harder is that, several thousand Jews that have been killed since October 7th. I think right now, close to 2,000, including people who were killed on October 7th, IDF soldiers, security forces, hostages, almost 2,000 people killed, and that Israel will be remembering starting tonight.
I think what Yom HaZikaron, Israel Remembrance Day, will hit deeper this year is that we know that we have the war still ahead of us. Mm-hmm. And it's not like we're commemorating the past, but we're sort of living in anticipation of the present and the future. And it's like we just know that there's a long road to redemption. There's a long road to freedom. And it demands sacrifice, and it demands the Jewish people to be heroes. And each one of those are just the truest heroes that could be.
For so many of us in Israel, it's like every day is really Memorial Day. We walk around with the names and the faces of our friends and our brothers and our sisters in our hearts. We live that. Having an actual day just gives us an address to just let it all out, let the tears out. But really, we walk around with it all the time. And by the way, it's not just soldiers. It's any Jew that is killed for being a Jew, even in a terror attack in the land of Israel, because when you were a Jew in the land of Israel, you were actually in that army. of bringing the light of redemption and goodness to the world and fighting this dark jihad. And so, yeah, for me, when I'm looking at Memorial Day and going into it, there's a certain source of dread, but also the recognition that these people that we're memorializing, as we say when they pass away at their cemetery, they're betror ha'chaim. They're tied in because this illusion of really life and death, and the death are far gone. When you give your life for Israel, for that which is eternal, Israel is eternal, your energy and your life force is intertwined inextricably with the force of life in God himself. And so we cry for them, but those tears are for our yearning for them, our missing them, and our mourning what was lost. But from their perspective, they're tied in to the God of Israel.
And in some ways, it's such an honor because it is right leading up to Israel Independence Day, which to me is one of the most marvelous of all holidays on the calendar, because it is the beginning of the end of the world as we know it. Meaning all of the world, since the destruction of the temple, all religions were sort of formed, whether it be Judaism as we know it today, Rabbinic Judaism, Christianity, Islam. It was all evolved after the temple was destroyed in the exile. And now, Israel Independence Day, it's like we're returning back to our source, to a time before religion, and now we're not like saying, oh God, thank you who delivered the many in the hands of few, like we say on Hanukkah, the strong in the hands of the weak. In 1948, was there a better way to describe the Jews as the weak and the few and against the head of these mighty Arab armies and a bunch of Holocaust survivors that were fending off these nations and these professional armies? I mean, we're living in a time where religion isn't just something of the past, but it's like we are living the holidays in recognizing for what it is that the Bible is now once again alive. The prophecies are coming to pass, and it's a hard road to freedom, but we are literally on the road toward redemption.
As Christians, what's it like for you guys?
Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. For me, I was just actually thinking what to tell everyone listening, because there's a lot of people out there that are thinking about how do I take in this moment with Israel. It's funny you asked me that, because I was literally thinking everyone that's watching right now needs to cry with Israel over the lost, and that's what I have faces in mind of people that were lost to us, but as you just described. The gain, incredible. Those guys are part of the most, and Rav Malamed here in Har Bracha teaches an amazing teaching of the life that they experience is so incredibly, we can't even fathom these that have been lost, but they're in an incredible place of life. I think as we mourn those physical loss, and really internalize it, the young men that died, many of them newly married, many of them with one child. Think how harsh and hard that is, and that has affected every family across Israel in some way, many obviously very close and some distant relatives. It affects everyone. So we need to internalize, and I encourage all of you out there, before you celebrate Independence Day, take a moment of silence to remember the miracle and all the lives that were given to be able to celebrate. And we needed to cry and take in that pain as well, as the nations of Israel. That's what I believe. And as we cry with Israel, those tears will be turned to joy as we make that shift from the remembrance to the celebration that we're living on an incredible day when the nation of Israel has returned. This has not been seen in 2,000 years. This is prophecy becoming a reality. The nation of Israel is rising against all odds. It's not a normal thing. It's a godly thing. And so to celebrate the miracle of Israel with Israel is absolutely essential for all the nations. If you don't have an Israeli flag, go buy one right now. Amazon will have it to you in moments. Get the Israeli flag, fly the flag, turn some Hebrew music on, invite your neighbors over and your friends, and have a party to celebrate the miraculous time that we're living in right now.
Well, can I just say too? Well, number one, on the I think the Jewish people know how to go from mourning to rejoicing better than anybody else. Even some of the Israeli biblical festivals are like that, right? But number one, Israel's such a small country that everybody knows someone who's been killed or affected by those who are killed or affected by terrorism, whether it's a family member, a distant family member, or a friend, or a neighbor, like someone in your neighborhood. Even for me, not being Jewish or being Israeli, like I know people who have been killed, or affected by terrorism. The community that we live right next to, multiple people killed in terrorism. So I think that's one thing, is that for Memorial Day and looking at 1,851 people fallen and murdered since October 7th, day 571 of the war, every single person of the 8 million Jews living in Israel know someone. Every single person is affected by the war, is affected by terrorism. It's very close. It's a very personal thing, I guess, is what I'm saying. And then two, just kind of echoing what you're saying, Josh, going straight from Memorial Day into Independence Day, Israel's celebrating 77 years of independence since 1948. I think that is what we need to remember for anybody around the world, and also for the new woke right who's trying to turn the world, not to turn the world on against Israel, is to remember the end of the story, and to remember that, October 7th, thousands of people killed in Israel, terrorism, a war on 7 fronts. Israel, I don't know why Israel's enemies think that after 3,000 years, they have any chance of being victorious against the Jewish people or of wiping the Jewish people out. I don't know how anybody in Iran thinks that they could eliminate Israel or wipe them off the map. It's just crazy to think about the end of the story. Miracles are still happening. Israel survived on October 7th. There was not a bigger war in Judea and Samaria or on the northern front in Lebanon. All of the Arab nations surrounding Israel did not attack on that same day. God's hand is clearly at work more than ever. Secular Israelis in Israel are turning to God, are turning back to the Torah, are keeping the commandments. It's just an amazing thing. And I think the light from Israel, the Torah from Israel, is going forth from Zion to the nations. And Jeremy, I think I see that you have a little bit of Torah for us to end this out with, and I think that could be really fitting as Israel prepares to go into Independence Day.
Well, if we talk about changing the narrative and we talk about bringing God back into the conversation, then the most spoken about event, the most prophesied event in the Bible is that one day after a long and painful exile, the people of Israel will return to our homeland. It's mentioned over 40 times by every single prophet in the Bible because that's the fundamental promise. There was only one promise that was given to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It was the land of Israel. And then one day that promise is going to be fulfilled. But I just want to read one prophecy out of the 40 plus in Jeremiah chapter 31. Here's what it says. Behold, I will bring them from the lands of the north and gather them from the ends of the earth. Among them will be the blind and the lame, the pregnant woman and the Lord was giving birth together. A great congregation will return here. And it's who does God say is going to come back? The blind, the lame, the broken? I mean, is there a better way to describe the Jewish people in 1948 than the blind and the lame and the broken families, the remnants of the Holocaust survivors that come back? It's not like a mighty thing that's going to happen miraculously. No, everything is told exactly the way it's going to be. And inside the land of Israel, it's not going to be easy. There's going to be a long road to redemption. But what we see now is that religion is usually commemorating something of the past, believing in some sort of event that happened then. But what's happening is that right now, religion is sort of disappearing and we're entering into a post-religion area where now we're having a living relationship with the dynamic living God of Israel who's brought the people of Israel back to the land of Israel. And we have an opportunity to participate in it and take part in it. And really this Independence Day, celebrate the fact that the Bible is alive and that God is alive and Am Yisrael Chai.
And I think for anybody watching or listening, that's just a decision you guys have to make. Are you going to stand with Israel? And by the way, this Independence Day is a perfect time to do just that. So, guys, it's been great to be with you. Let us know what you're doing for Memorial Day or Independence Day or what you thought about today. We want to hear from you guys in the comments section. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to check out the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. And as always, stop listening to the lies and the propaganda, even from the new woke right, and tune into what's happening, the truth of what's happening here in Israel. We'll be back very soon here at the Israel Guys.